All right, so Walter Storholt and John Stillman with you here from Third Wheel Media, and we talk to folks all the time who are looking to do a radio show, John, whether it just be casual interest or they're kind of ready to jump in, and they're just kind of wondering about a couple of final questions. But regardless of where people are in the process, there are always two questions that are very prevalent. One, how much does it cost? And then that inevitably leads to what's going to be my return on the investment. So how do we answer that first question of what it's going to cost?
Well, it's hard to answer from the standpoint of total cost because that's completely going to vary based on what market that you're in. Mm-hmm. Obviously, our cost is going to be consistent. That's really the only fixed part of the equation,
right.
though. And even our cost is going to vary based on exactly what service we're providing for you. But
sure.
If we're just talking about a full-blown radio show, we're interviewing you, doing the whole thing. That's going to be the only fixed cost in the whole equation. On top of that, you're going to have the cost of your airtime, obviously. We're talking about in a small market, you might be able to get on a station for a couple $100s a week. Mm-hmm. Now, those are pretty rare, and you're not going to have a huge volume of calls coming from a station like that.
Right. Less isn't necessarily better.
Right. Mm-hmm. At the other end of the spectrum, you're going to have stations that might cost $3,000 to $4,000 a week. Now, that's Chicago, New York, L.A., markets like that, and then you have everything in between. You may have markets where you have, a couple of really varying types of stations within the market. You might have a station that costs a couple $1,000 a week to be on the top station in the market, while you could be on a lower tier station in the market and only pay $400 or $500 a week. Mm-hmm. So it's going to vary by market size and also by the size of the station that you're actually on.
Okay, so it's going to be different from market to market. Can you be successful in different types of markets? Can there be success in a small market on a small station, or do I have to go biggest station in the market in order to have any kind of success?
Well, certainly we have examples of both, right? Mm-hmm. We have an example in New York where, they're paying, $3,800 a week for their airtime on a huge station. And they're getting their, 15 to 20 leads a week.
Yep.
At the other end of the spectrum,
sometimes 30.
yeah. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the Panhandle of Florida, mm-hmm. where it might cost $200. I think he actually has a station that's only $150 a week. So he's on a couple of different really small stations in the market. He might get a couple of calls a month. But, it's pretty easy to make it pay for itself when the airtime cost is that cheap. So, you just have to have some perspective on what am I paying, and from there, what kind of ROI should I be expecting? Which leads us to, I guess,
what does success look like? What is ROI in radio?
So the first thing you want to understand going into it is that radio is going to bring you some intangibles that aren't going to be able to be measured. Okay. So the fact that you can put that radio station logo, as heard on whatever radio station, on your seminar mailers and your email blasts and, have things around the office that just sort of add credibility and, an element of showbiz and celebrity to your whole business. Those are intangibles that we can't measure. That said, we don't want to do a radio show just for that. That's branding. It's not really marketing. Mm-hmm. Marketing brings you direct leads. Branding is how people think of your company.
Right.
So the branding is nice, but it's intangible. We can't measure it. The marketing, that's the leads that we can measure. And so for a lot of people, I tell them, look, depending on the situation in the market, if you did it for 6 months or a year and all you did was break even, to some extent, that is a successful run because of all the intangibles that you got out of it. Mm-hmm. That said, we don't have very many people who do it for 6 months or a year and don't actually make money on it.
Right.
So, I've had people who have been doing it for several years who have, been very meticulous about measuring their ROI. What kind of clients are they getting from the radio show? What kind of dollar amounts? And, at the top end of the spectrum, you'll have guys that are getting a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ROI on their total dollars invested in their radio show. It may vary from year to year. We have one example of a guy who's consistently been at 2-to-1. And then suddenly this year, for whatever reason, he jumped up to 4-to-1. Mm-hmm. He just had a really great year on the radio. So, that's a perfectly good range to be. At the end of the day, you don't want it to be vastly different from any other forms of marketing that you do. If you can spend $10,000 on a seminar consistently and make $50,000 or $60,000 off of it, well, if we're going into radio saying, all right, well, I need to get a 6-to-1 ROI, or it's not going to make sense, I should just keep doing seminars, that's probably not a really realistic way to go about it. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 on your seminars and you want to just create a different stream, a different way of getting leads, sure, great thing to do. You can probably achieve the same kind of success.
Yeah.
And, again, I do like it. Obviously, I'm biased toward the radio approach, but if the ROI is roughly the same as your other marketing streams, again, because of all the intangibles, I like having the radio element.
And the intangibles aren't just how people perceive you outside of your own office with the branding elements and those kinds of things. There can be sort of intangible leads that you're not seeing, that you're not necessarily tracking, but people hear you on the radio. Maybe they then come to one of your seminars. They never told you that they first heard about you on the radio, or the radio played an impact or had an impact in them deciding to attend a seminar, an event. They may never mention it. We've heard enough stories where radio's been sort of a sidekick to helping a sale or a lead come through, and there's numerous probably other stories that we don't hear about on a week-to-week
And
basis.
I've actually seen it work in either direction with myself even. So, I've had people come to my seminars who were very familiar with my radio show. They'd never called it, but they came to the seminar because they recognized the name and the logo and all that stuff. On the other hand, I've had people who have come to seminars, not signed up for an appointment at the seminar, but they found out about the radio show at the seminar, listened in the coming weeks, and eventually over a month or two, you wear them down, and then they come in.
Yeah.
So I've seen it work both ways.
Not to go down the road of just constant caveats and individual stories, but we had a realtor with a show who it was a general contractor who was painting a lady's house because she was getting ready to sell her home, heard our realtor show and mentioned to the lady that, hey, you should probably call this lady. And luckily she mentioned that she'd heard about her through the radio show from her contractor, but very easily that lady could have called and said, I heard about you from somewhere, and I'm looking forward to meeting with you. What was it, the stat you were telling me about the other day, where they did some sort of survey of where people, they purposely only advertised in one location?
Yeah. This was like 25 years ago when newspaper advertising was actually still a relevant thing. But there was some grand opening for a store, and it was an ad agency that was actually doing some kind of study. And so they polled everybody at the door of the grand opening of the store, and they said, where did you hear about us? Was it on TV, radio, or newspaper? And all of the responses were split by about a third. Third for TV, third for radio, third for newspaper. Well, the reality was they had only advertised on the radio. People didn't know where they'd heard it from them. So that's interesting, and yes, you are going to get a lot of indirect leads that way. However, we want to craft a show that has a very direct call to action.
Yes.
So that you do have a measurable response, and you can tell what's coming in from the show. And then all the indirect, intangible stuff you get on top of that is gravy, but the main thing you want to focus on, of course, is the stuff that you can measure. That's important.
Last but not least is now when it comes to your particular situation, your particular market that you're in, the next question is going to be like, all right, well, this station is number one in the market. Here's the price. Is it worth doing? And that's where we can give guidance. We can't give guarantees on, yes, you're going. I mean, there are a few stations where we would feel very comfortable saying, it'll be shocking if you don't have success in this scenario based on past experience and just the way the numbers lie and other areas across the country that have a similar setup. We can give a lot of confidence into some situations, whereas others, sometimes we have to say, you know what, it's a bit of an unknown, right? And that doesn't mean that those aren't eventually successful, but we want to be open and honest about what the expectations are going into each station or each marketing choice you have.
And in most markets, with most of the advisors that we work with, the end goal, the end game is going to get on that big station, the number one station in the market. If you're not on there out of the gate, the idea is that you want to work your way onto that station after a year or two. Maybe it's that you need to get to the point where you have the budget for a station like that, or it could be that that station just isn't open. They don't have a time slot available for you, and you just have to wait. So in some cases, advisors might want to start on a smaller station in the market, sort of cut their teeth, get used to the idea of being on the air, perfect their systems in terms of how they handle the leads, because leads that you get from the radio show are different from other types of leads. They're different from seminar, they're different from classes, other marketing streams that you have. It's just not the same type of person. So you want to get used to the type of lead. And, maybe you do want to start that in a smaller budget situation where you can sort of feel your way along. And then you work your way up to a bigger station and a bigger station. So there are different ways to go about it. Some people, they're good communicators. They've got a really good staff that can handle all different types of leads, and they're ready to jump onto the big station from day one. And if the big station has an availability, well, all right, go for it.
And sometimes we take the approach of, hey, this station is the station in the market to be on. They only have an 8 p.m. opening right now, but it's very inexpensive, and it's a foot in the door, and then you'll be front of the line to an upgrade later on. And we've had a lot of advisors do that, get their foot in the door at a time. And then what was kind of funny was we thought that would be a throwaway time later on when they could upgrade, and they ended up having so much success in that time still that they kept it when they also upgraded.
Yeah. So
it's neat.
There are a lot of different ways that you can grow. Sometimes you're growing by adding stations. Sometimes you're growing by just moving from one station to a better station. Sometimes it's moving to a better time slot on the same station.
And here's one cool last side point. Our cost stays the same. So you can dominate the market and start getting on a whole bunch of stations if you are having success. Louisiana area, we've got an advisor there who's on 3 different stations. We've got another one in a different market on, 5 or 6 stations, and we're able to fit all those different formats. And so you can improve your return on investment that way by having your production costs stay the same while you expand to those other radio stations.
Yep, absolutely.
Nice benefit as well. Thanks for the conversation, John. Appreciate it as always.
Pleasure.
If you're an advisor, a realtor, an attorney, another business professional looking to improve your marketing and radio is of interest to you and you want to talk about your particular situation, we invite you to call us, set up a time to have a conversation about that. What you do is call 919-378-1410. That's a 919 area code, 378-1410, or you can always just email us, info@thirdwheelmedia.com, and we'll make sure you get hooked up with the right person to talk a little bit more about your situation. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.